here. And am I recording? Yes, I am. All right, very good. All right, well, welcome everybody. You can see the agenda has been up there for a minute, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And again, I've got everybody on mute, but please unmute yourself if you have anything to say, and do not hesitate to interrupt, raise your hand, whatever. This is definitely to be an interactive meeting. So, Elliot and I were just talking about this event called the Hydrogen Summit that happened on the 13th up in Boulder. And this was presented by Emerson. And just looking real quick to see if I don't think Brad is on, but really nice event. They had Will Tour from the Colorado Energy Office, the executive director, come on. And um, I guess I wouldn't call it a keynote meeting or message, but he kind of spoke to set the tone for everything in the beginning. And then we had panels. We had folks from the Colorado Public Utilities Commission and NREL folks, some RMI folks. I was there, got a chance to talk a little bit. And it was held on the SEEC, the SEEC campus of CU up in Boulder. And then they hosted a network social afterwards over at Avanti, which is over on the Pearl Street Mall. So great event. I don't know if anybody's on wants to make a comment. I'll just pause for a second there. All right. Okay, we'll keep going. So there was another event. Oh, I've got my slides screwed up here. Here we go. This was the third public meeting to talk about the three fuel station project. And this was held June 5th down at the CSU Spur campus. Beautiful new buildings that they have down there. And basically, Buford Barr from New Day Hydrogen presented an overview of the project. There were folks there from NREL, from Nikola. You can probably read this faster than I can say it, but Drive Clean, City of Denver, and so forth. And what was kind of fun was we had a couple of show and tell vehicles. We had Roy Hensler from Rising Creek Transport brought his Nikola Class 8. You can see the picture there on the right, and let a few folks drive it around. I didn't drive it, but I understand it's got just incredible pickup as you'd expect from an electric vehicle. And then something new is Brendan Donner, who works for Pilot, has bought a Mirai, and he's got it licensed in Colorado, and he's got all kinds of stories what he had to go through to license a supposedly, according to the Motor Vehicle Department, a non-existent vehicle. But anyway, he's got that license, and he's going to be fueling that here in Colorado with a electric green fueling station. And I'm just forgive me, I'm kind of scanning the list here to see if I don't see Brendan and I don't see Jane Allo, but we'll have a presentation on that, and probably even a face-to-face meeting kind of centered around that Mirai and the fueling. That's kind of exciting news here in Colorado. Brendan's not waiting for the three public fuel stations. He's doing it himself. All right, so let me shift gears. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Colorado Hydrogen Network membership. You know, we've been operating 4.5 years. We started at the end of 2019 with a pretty tiny budget, and that's fine. That's worked out okay because our expenses are small. I mean, we've got the cost of the website, the Zoom fees, and a little bit of marketing material. And of course, the labor has been all volunteer. You know, I do this as a labor of love, and certainly it's something I couldn't stop doing. So I'm happy to do it. But we really only have a handful of paying members, and they're the bigger companies that are supporting the organization. And it's always kind of bothered me a little bit that, you know, we've got so many people that participate, but they don't really have a kind of a vested interest or haven't really kind of bought into CHN. And so I'd like to try to change that. But the dues, the way they have been, start at 1K because they follow the Colorado Clean Tech Industries Association dues, because CHN is formed under CCIA, and it's actually joint membership in both organizations. So the idea that I've had for some time, and finally worked out the details on this, is to add some new low-cost dues. I'd like to add just a $50 a year for individual and a $200 for startup companies, which is good for basically 2 years. And these dues would be completely voluntary, pay or not, and they are tax deductible. So, as has been the case in the past, I want to continue to welcome absolutely anybody to participate at no charge. So, this is not a mandatory kind of a thing, but the idea is that like to really try to grow CHN a little bit more. Right now, with basically no budget, I mean, if I ever wanted to stop doing this or had to stop doing this, we don't really have the money to actually pay any kind of staff. As I said, I'd really like to see a lot of the people who join the meetings all the time just get more invested and kind of engaged in CHN. Again, build up a piggy bank to be able to have some paid positions someday. And this would also allow us to sponsor some events. I mean, even if we just have some snacks and maybe pay a few $100s for a haul, I mean, that still runs into a little bit of money. I think the last face-to-face meeting we had, I probably spent $500-600 just on, some food and things like that. And then the other thing I'd like to do is really kind of reward people who do pay for a membership to show up as some kind of a members list, a members page on the website. So that's the idea. And here's what it really looks like. So again, the dues for the companies basically that are following the CCIA membership start at 1,000 and go up to 10,000 if the company's got 150 employees. But I'd like to add these tax deductible, kind of just free will, if you will, or voluntary sets of dues so that a lot more people I think can feel like they're really contributing and being part of CHN. Whoops. So if you want to know more information about CCIA and what those dues for really their company dues include and what CCIA does, you can go to coloradocleantech.com, the website there, to just find out more about those. And the other advantage to setting up tax deductible ability, I guess I'll call it, is that if there's a company or somebody out there that would just like to make a one-time donation or something to CHN as a tax deductible gift, we can do that. So I'll be sending out an email soon. We don't have the all the links in the website set up yet, but I'll send out an email once those are live, which hopefully will be within a week or so, and that'll be on the join page. And then in the future, what I'd like to do is send out membership renewals to everybody in June. And again, for individuals, well, actually for everybody, it's totally voluntary. All right, so this is what the join page looks like. I just updated this a couple of days ago. It shows that the list there, and then down at the bottom there'll be a join button, and then when you go to that link, you'll be able to select: am I an individual? Am I asking for the startup dues, or am I a company and we've got 30 employees? So here's where we fall. So that's pretty much it. So any thoughts, questions, or discussion on that at all? I'd love to have some feedback from folks. Anybody, any comments?
Brian, I was paying a fee that was also tied to CCIA. Is that still going to be in place, or is that changing now?
Well, no, that will still be in place. Let me go back to this. Come on, get my script and my screen to cooperate here. So Frank, are you more than one employee?
We're one right now.
You're one. Well, I mean, I guess I wouldn't stop you for if you wanted to go over to the individual and just pay $50, rather than paying $1,000 for a company. That's entirely up to you. And all of these are honor system, kind of what people feel they'd like to put into it. The only thing is I'd like to try to make this as fair as possible for folks. So if somebody's paying, I want to try to give them, like I say, being on a list of the contributing members to CHN and so forth. And Frank, if you wanted to drop back to just an individual membership and not continue your CCIA membership, you could certainly do that.
I got it.
Uh, I have a question. What is startup 2 years? What is that? Is that a corporate membership, and how many people would that include if it is?
Oh, yeah, that's just to say that your organization is a startup company, you're a member, and then certainly, everybody that's involved with the organization is willing to participate. And I'd like to limit that to just 2 years, but it starts when you start paying. So, yeah, for example, I know that New Day Hydrogen paid $1,000 for the small, but if they want to drop back to just a startup for 2 years, that's fine. Keith's got his hand up. Keith, go ahead.
Yeah, just curious about the relationship with CCIA and whether that is changing, or is that the same? Is CHN still kind of a part of CCIA, or is this a bit of a fork in the road?
That's not changing at all, and that's a great question, Keith.
Okay.
So I think we're called an initiative of CCIA, and it's really been fairly loose. I mean, uh, Catherine over there has been doing the newsletter, and there really hasn't been that much interaction, which I actually want to change. Laura and I have been having conversations. I don't know if Laura's on. Looking down the list, I don't see Laura. She's the executive director of CCIA. I'd like to start expanding so that CHN has some initiatives that maybe CCIA is participating in, or we do some things together. So that's definitely not changing. The only change here is really that I'd like to add these tax deductible individual and startup memberships because we have so many of those people. I mean, we have a lot of individuals that participate, and I'd like to give them the opportunity to, kind of contribute or be part of this, as they like.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, good questions. Anybody else?
Brian, it's Bill here.
Yeah, hey Bill.
You should tell people what you have in mind for a budget for the use of the money. We need some sort of idea of what you have in mind, your ambition, and what we would see you use the money for. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Bill. And it's kind of a brief list. Where was it here? Here we go. Benefits of donating. Well, first of all, I'd really like to try to build up a war chest or whatever you want to call it at CHN so that we at some point could hire some staff if we wanted to. Um, I also would like to try to sponsor more face-to-face events. And so the money would go to that. And again, you're probably going to spend $1,000 at a face-to-face if you have some snacks and maybe pay for a venue or something like that. You could probably do some cheaper things, and we'll certainly do that. And then I'd also like to try to reward everybody that is paying to say, here's the official CHN members and maybe the status, are you individual startup or corporate membership. And those are the things that are coming to mind right now. But that's a good point, Bill, to what are you getting for your money? All right. Others, any other thoughts or criticisms or questions on this?
Brian, this is Carly with Excel Energy's fleet team. So I just wanted to say thank you for flagging this as well. I had not been aware of the membership dues with CHN before today. So thank you for flagging this. And then I will just speak from a large corporate standpoint. Having a one-pager document would be great for someone like me to be able to share with other decision makers who we just from a large corporate standpoint, we have several teams that have to mark their stamp of approval before we officially join organizations. So that's kind of a one pager. If that's available, that would make it easier for corporates to say, okay, we have all the approvals we need, we're joining.
Yeah. And, Carly, if it turns out that you run it by Excel and they just say, well, no, it's, we don't have the budget or whatever. But you'd like to just be on as an individual or something like that, that's fine. And,
Awesome.
but that's a good point. I will put together a nice one page that really describes all the benefits. And I need to do a little homework there because I've got to look at, since this involves CCIA, what they're telling everybody as far as what are the benefits of membership. So, yeah, and I've been horrible about really trying to work membership. I always tell people, just participate. You don't need to pay, and that's because we didn't have expenses. But I'm not really helping the organization. And in order to grow the organization, I think I need to start at least working on trying to build up kind of a war chest here.
So, Brian,
Yeah, Howard.
do you imagine that this is? I saw you show the membership of the CCIA. Yeah, just stop there. Do you get money back from flow through back from them to help fund things? I mean, so I'm an individual. I pay you $50. That's fine. Let's say I have a company of 2,500. I get membership of in CHN, but does CCIA fund you in any way?
Yeah. And so if CHN brings in a membership, like say, for example, I brought Excel to the table and they end up paying their $10,000, then the way that we've always had this set up and the way it's going to continue is that CHN gets 80% of that and CCIA gets 20%. And then if it's somebody who's already a member of CCIA and wants to extend their membership to CHN, no money changes hands in that case. That's because they were already a CCIA member. So we're just kind of I guess I would say cleaning this up a little bit and trying to put it on a little bit better financial standing.
It would, as an individual, it would be nice if there was a way for CCIA to expand their membership options because I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure that $1,000 a year is what is in the budget for me, but $50 certainly is closer.
Oh, I agree. I mean that $1,000 was a little steep, and it was based on the way they were structured and everything else. And I don't criticize that at all. I think that makes sense. But it's just that, so many folks, like yourself or others, that are a big participant in CHN, you don't really have a little bit of a financial stake. And so that's why I wanted to make this change. All right, good discussion. Anybody else? Any more comments or thoughts? Okay, probably enough said there. So anyway, no action yet. Stand by. I'll send out an announcement to everybody once the website is up and operating and let you all participate as you like. All right, so the probably the biggest topic that I'd like to talk about today is this idea of a Colorado clean energy hub. And this has expanded, I think, a little bit from the idea of a hydrogen hub. But the problem that we've got is that right now there's such a gridlock or a stalemate in the market of people wanting to get in, either selling hydrogen or whatever, but there's no market. And what I mean by market really is more than one, source, user, and some infrastructure available to make a market. The analogy I use is if you wanted to sell a new smartphone or refrigerator or washing machine or a car or something, I mean, you can create that and you can go out and sell it and you can find buyers for that and a market to support it of parts and infrastructure and fuels and everything else. And we don't really have that, not only for hydrogen, but really, I think in the renewable energy or the clean energy space. So in order to make this market happen, all of the sources and users and infrastructure have to be deployed, at the same time, at the same scale, and at a price that's competitive with the competing fuel out there, which is, gasoline, diesel, and gas. Not so much coal anymore, although I guess you could lump coal into that. So for a long time, I've been feeling that, some kind of someone to lead this or at least propose something and a plan and a cooperating group of people is really needed to break this stalemate. I just don't think that letting market forces, take over as we do with most other things really works that well. I mean, it'll eventually happen, but time is of the essence here. The climate is warming. So what I'd like to propose as a solution is to sponsor a clean energy hub, and this would be just in Colorado, at least initially. But the first thing I think we would need is a plan for what this whole energy market looks like. And I'm going to show you the big picture of the big grandiose energy market here in a minute, which really consists of the whole gamut, right? Hydrogen or other energy supplies, how to move it around, whether it's pipes or trucks, um, dispensing it or selling it, the off takers, the users to use it. And then the infrastructure, if it's transportation, we'd be talking vehicles. If it's utilities, we might be talking turbines that run on hydrogen, et cetera. And then also funding. And funding really is not only investors willing to lend to people who want to build pieces of this, but also help from the government and the state and federal government, basically to close the gap on the difference in cost between business as usual and clean energy. So what this plan would consist of is, you know, the what is the plan? It's a systems design, maybe a block diagram, or however you want to phrase that. And then also how to go do that, how to cooperate, how to get different companies to join together and work together, timing on that as well. And then, of course, like I said, the funding. And all of this would be to try to focus efforts and to guide decisions. So what I envision here is enlisting, I'm calling it a consortium, but it's basically a group of stakeholder participants to work on this plan, to come up with what we think is the overall plan for it, the block diagram, and then to also be participants in this. And this would give all the stakeholders a way to find each other, to collaborate. You know, if you want to sell hydrogen, you need to go find customers. And so if the customers are part of this consortium, that's a way that everybody can collaborate. And then also, I think this group could issue RFPs. Now, these might be requests for proposal that aren't funded, but certainly they could be, hey, stakeholders out there, suggest how you think we could do this, or, you know, what you think the maybe some of the issues are and things like that. And then, of course, also as part of this is to line up these funding sources and grants that can support this. So what does a consortium look like? Well, it would have suppliers, users, infrastructure, funding. So the suppliers I'm envisioning would be hydrogen wells, which are brand new, just you know, coming online. What I'm calling this generated underground hydrogen. This is the Proton Technologies process to take old oil wells and convert them into being hydrogen generators. And then energy conversion. We may have to go from electricity to hydrogen, or from hydrogen to ammonia, and so forth. So those different conversion steps have to be in there. And then, of course, tanks, NH3, that's ammonia, biofuel tanks, gaseous hydrogen, liquid hydrogen, and so forth. And then pipelines. All right, users. So we need fleets, and this is something that you know, New Day and Elliott are out there working, trying to align some fleets to be the off takers. Industry, we're probably going to need a fairly big scale on this, so we may have to try to go out there and enlist steel or glass or cement companies. Utilities, it'd be nice if we could find a utility that's willing to convert a gas turbine over to hydrogen, because that would offtake quite a bit of hydrogen. And then oil developers, these are people that I've talked to already. They have large gen sets, as they call them. They're basically diesel motors with generators on them to provide power out in the oil field. And they would love to run those gen sets off of hydrogen instead. And they take quite a bit of fuel. So that could be a good off-taker. Infrastructure, vehicles, self-explanatory there. Turbines, already talked to that. And then internal combustion engines running hydrogen to generate electricity. Funding, of course, tax incentives, investors, and the Colorado State enterprises. So the idea here is to come up with some kind of a plan, you know, put it out there and see if we can't interest some folks in participating in this. So I'd like to kind of delve into this a little bit and talk about as we look toward an entire plan for the entire energy transition, one of the first things we have to consider is, what forms of energy are we using? Is it only wind and solar, or we got some other things? So the energy solutions that would be part of this are going to have to meet three criteria. And you all have probably seen me present this once before, of this three-legged stool analogy, where we've got to have we've got to have a good TRL, technology readiness level of things. We don't want science experiments. The cost is, we've got to at least have a path to compete with the incumbent fossil fuels. And then we have to think too about performance and convenience. So if we consider technical and cost and performance and convenience, I think this helps drive us to what is the right energy for each of these uses. And here's my take on this. So you can see the sources I've got over here, and I'm including things like the generated underground hydrogen using the oil wells. I'm including hydrogen wells. I'm also including biomass, algae, and nuclear, although algae probably not suitable for use in Colorado because we're too high a latitude. You probably need to do that closer to the equator. And then nuclear, we don't have any nuclear here in Colorado, but certainly that should appear as part of this plan, so that at least we know kind of where it fits and so forth. So let me pause there. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts at this point? Everybody's pretty good so far. All right. Well,
Brian,
oh yeah, hey Bill.
Brian, Bill here. Brian,
Yes, go ahead, Bill.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
This makes a great deal of sense in two potential contexts. One is the notion I put forward back in 2010 at the National Hydrogen Association annual meeting, that we will eventually need a prototype pilot plant for pipelining hydrogen. I called it an International Renewable Hydrogen Transmission Demonstration Facility. And that could include a pipeline backbone from a number of sources to a concentrated place of consumption, like a university campus. So that would fit nicely with the three fueling stations that you think of. The second context is, it may be timely to combine your idea with the potential for a deep hot dry rock geothermal source energy plant, which would produce primarily directly electricity, from which hydrogen could be electrolytically produced as well. And you would be able to locate that because of the ubiquity of the deep hot dry rock geothermal. Anywhere you have a load concentration, consumption, fueling station for trucks or something like that. So those are the two that I think of. And of course, if you could combine the two with the emergence of this deep hot dry rock geothermal, that could be a win-win-win for everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Bill. And the geothermal, the pipeline, all of that is part of this plan. And really the purpose here is to set up this hub, to describe it all, to have all kinds of people vet it and work with it. And then I think it's something we could take to Department of Energy and say, hey, we need a little help here, some funding. Would you consider funding it? We can go to different companies and say, this is in your bailiwick. Would you like to be part of this consortium so that when we can try to launch this thing, you're part of it? So I think, without, I used to have a university professor that was very fond of saying, you got to have the plan. And I think the first step here really is to have a plan, and then to get the people who want to participate in that plan. And then I think the sky's the limit. So, somebody needs to do this. And, I don't see any reason why CHN, and I'm hoping CCIA will participate in this, because they bring folks from other energy sources other than hydrogen to the table. And, there's some people out there that contributed to the hydrogen hub that didn't happen here. And I think they would be interested in participating as well. So it's kind of one of those cases, either you throw it against the wall to see what sticks, or, raise it and see who salutes, kind of a thing. So that's the idea here.
Well, step one is to form the collaborative first.
Yes.
You
yes.
and your personal Rolodex get the people together and see if there is critical mass and interest, and then they design the event and the facility, and then you go forth and find the
Yeah.
money for it, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But we have to start somewhere. And so this is intended to be kind of the seed here to um, throw something out and get people aligned and get them cooperating and get them working together to do this. So, all right.
Thank you.
So, the hydrogen hubs were all about hydrogen. And I think this should really be expanded to all of clean energy. And so let me give you my definitions, and I think they're universal definitions of what I mean by clean and what I mean by renewable. And then I'm even going to go on to talk to green. So the definition of clean energy is that it does not increase atmospheric greenhouse gases. So that could be several categories. It might be no emissions, or it might be neutral, where the use maybe emits greenhouse gas, but the production absorbs an amount equal to the emission. So an example of that would be, say you were using algae to create a biofuel. Algae pulled carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Your biofuel now gets burned, and that CO2 goes back into the atmosphere. But you make sure that the setup is net zero. So it emitted greenhouse gas, but it absorbs it in making it. But it could also be negative. So your fuel use might emit greenhouse gas, but the production of that fuel removes more greenhouse gas than emitted. And an example there would be, again, using algae. But if you took some of your biofuel from your algae and sequestered it, just dropped it down an old oil well or buried it underground or something, now you're actually pulling some carbon out of the atmosphere, even though the use does emit some greenhouse gases. So that's a definition of basically zero, neutral, or negative. And then renewable energy, I mean, that's kind of self-explanatory. That's any source that gets replenished or is inexhaustible, like the sun or the wind or those kind of things. So difference between clean and renewable. So clean and renewable really are separate things. And all renewable energy is clean, but not all clean energy is renewable. And the example there would be if you're using an old oil well to generate hydrogen underground, carbon never comes out of the well, but it's not renewable. So it's clean. There's no greenhouse gases, but yet it's not renewable. So subtle distinction there. Now, what about green? I think a lot of times people use renewable and green and clean kind of interchangeably, and I'm guilty of that myself. But green really means, it's really a shorthand that allows us to specify two things with one idea or one label, in this case, color. And those two things are whether the source of energy emitted CO2 or not, and whether the source of energy was renewable. So basically, that's a table of just four things, right? You've got emit CO2, yes or no, and source, is it renewable or non-renewable? So some examples here are for green, people tend to think of green as being only hydrogen created by electrolysis, but really a natural hydrogen well would be green. And I know those people call it either gold or white hydrogen, but I think they didn't really understand what the color meant, and they just made up a new one kind of willy-nilly. But and then, of course, wind, solar, geothermal, hydroelectric electricity, and the hydrogen that's generated from them, of course, are green. And then hydrogen from biofuel, biofuel or biomass that has 100% carbon capture and sequestration, which we can argue there may not be any technologies that are 100% carbon capture. So that's a difficult one to attain. Blue, of course, where a lot of us are familiar with this. This is making electricity or hydrogen from fossil fuels, but with quote unquote 100% carbon capture, which may be unobtainable. Again, the generated underground hydrogen that emits no greenhouse gas whatsoever. There's no methane, there's no carbon dioxide. So, but that's not renewable. So you'd have to consider that blue. And then electricity or hydrogen generated using nuclear power. I would consider blue because it's not renewable. The amount of uranium is finite. I suppose you could debate that, but energy from fossil fuels with less than 100% carbon capture is gray. And then, that's what's going on here. All right, there we go. And then this color tan, which I made up, nobody else is using tan, but we need a color to talk about hydrogen and biofuel from biomass with less than 100% carbon capture. So there's a color that doesn't even exist that we kind of need. So I know that not everybody in the world probably agrees with this, and I may not be a big enough voice to move this forward. But in my opinion, 4 colors is all we need, and here's what they really mean. But um, I think this is a pretty muddy waters here. Any comments at this point? Everybody's okay with that? I mean, like I say, there's probably a lot of people that disagree with this, but I think really 4 colors are all we need. All right, so we're all familiar with the different energy sectors, the electric grid and transportation and industry and aviation and so forth. Which energy forms really should we use for each of these sectors? Now, here's my position, and I think this is something that this consortium or collaboratory could work on looking at. But I think we need electricity. That's obvious. No one disagrees with that. I think we need hydrogen. I don't think too many people disagree with that, but they may disagree with where they get used. And then I think there's going to be a need in the future for biofuel. And I'm going to talk to that. So electric grid obviously would use electricity. Transportation, well, we've got battery vehicles out there, obviously electricity, and we've got hydrogen vehicles. And frankly, I think that in the long run, this is going to be all in one vehicle, be a plug-in hybrid fuel cell is going to be the vehicle of the future. You can charge at home if you're not going far. And if you're driving cross country, then you can fall back on the hydrogen as almost like a range extender. So I think that those two have a place there. I don't think biofuel has a place for vehicles at all. I don't think it's necessary. Industrial heat, hydrogen, and maybe biofuels, but I think primarily hydrogen for things like steel, glass, and cement making. And the reasons there are technical and cost. Aviation, we may see a few electric planes out there. As prone as lithium ion batteries are to short circuit and go ballistic, I don't think I'd care to fly on a plane with batteries. A lot of you probably noticed they ask you about batteries when you're flying. And if you receive an Amazon package with lithium ion batteries, there's all kinds of warnings on there. So I don't think electricity or batteries plus the weight is a good choice for aviation. But hydrogen certainly for short range, like regional kind of jets. But for long range, I think society may eventually decide that we really are going to have some kind of biofuel. Liquid hydrogen, the bulk and the weight, and using ammonia on aircraft, again, because of the weight, just probably aren't going to fly, pun intended. So I really think biofuel is going to become necessary. And hopefully it's biofuel that's coming from algae and things like that were intended just to remove CO2 in order to create that biofuel. Building heat, I think for new construction, there's no question that heat pumps are here to stay and a good solution for that. But for existing homes and buildings, the cost to replace the furnaces with a heat pump is just prohibitive. I mean, it could be $10,000 or more per home. You'll also get people that say, no, thanks. I don't trust it. I don't want you in my house. I'm not going to let you do it. So if we're going to get a significant number of homes and buildings converted over to something that's clean, I'll call it, for building heating, I really think we're going to need biofuel. And the way that would work is, well, I'll get to that in a second. I've got another slide on that. And then ships. Now, we've already seen Maersk has got, I think, 10 or 12 ships that are either already sailing or are in work that are going to burn methanol. Ships could probably burn ammonia, and that would probably work. It's just, I think people get a little worried about the the irritant nature of ammonia, and especially for like cruise ships and so forth. I just don't think that's going to be popular. And so I think that there's a real need and a real market out there for biofuels that could be friendly to the environment. So let me pause. Any thoughts or questions at this point? Now, by the way, what I'm working up to is the big block diagram plan here, but I'm kind of setting the ground for it. By the way, there's a tech brief on this. If you go to the Colorado Hydrogen Network website, there's a series of tech briefs, and this gives a little bit more background on why I think these fuels are going to be what's needed for these energy sectors. All right, so let me give you an example of a biofuel, and I've got a couple of podcasts on this. Let me get those up here if you want to hear about this. But the idea is that algae makes a really good source of biofuel because the entire plant is devoted to photosynthesis. You don't have problems like with a tree. You've got bark and trunk and roots and stems and things like that. Whereas with algae, the entire plant is devoted to photosynthesis. They're also very efficient. They've been developed and selected for their efficiency. And they're also very easily converted to other things like industrial enzymes and animal feed, as well as a biocrude. So you've got three co-products here that can make this very financially sound as far as a way to produce energy. The biocrude, pretty easy to extract a crude from that. And as I said earlier, you could sequester some of that underground. Say it's almost like a tax. Maybe the government says, all right, you want to create biocrude. Well, in order for us to allow you to do that, we want you to sequester some of that underground as kind of a tax and a way of pulling some of that carbon dioxide basically out of the atmosphere. But the biocrude that you'd use could go into a refinery, could be made into jet fuel or a renewable natural gas for homes. So in this way, we wouldn't have to change the equipment at the homes and buildings for heating. We could just change the fuel, and it could use all the existing infrastructure that's out there. And then, of course, some kind of fuel for ships, methanol, although it could be some kind of a diesel equivalent. And as those fuels are used, of course, the CO2 is going back into the atmosphere, but then it would be captured again. So algae is just one example. It could be wastewater. It could be garbage. It could be plastic. But I really think, well, of course, one of the problems with plastics is that carbon originally came from fossil fuels, so that's not quite as good. You really want something that's just growing. But a lot of bark beetle kill trees here in Colorado. Maybe we could have a company that could pull some of those trees out, which is expensive. But if you sell the lumber and you sell all of your scrap into making a biocrude, that may make a lot of sense. So that's something we certainly could investigate. Let me pause. Comments, questions here? Everybody hopefully thinks that's a good idea. All right. Well, we can come back to questions too. So, all right. So what does this look like? Well, let's do it block diagram level here initially. So we would have these different sources of clean energy. We've got electron sources and molecule sources. Electrons, obviously, wind, solar, geothermal, which I think is going to be huge. Frankly, I think someday we'll look back and say, "Oh, wasn't that quaint how we thought wind and solar would be good?" But solar's good on on your home maybe, and wind, yeah, if you're at the coast, that probably blows all the time. But for a lot of other folks, geothermal is a much better base, not base load, but a base source of energy. Hydroelectric, obviously not too big here in Colorado where it's kind of dry, but certainly big in the Pacific Northwest. And then molecular sources, hydrogen wells, which I mean, a lot of money and a lot of effort is going into that right now. I think we're going to see some pretty significant hydrogen wells real soon. The underground hydrogen source, again, the proton technologies scheme for doing that, and then biomass and algae. All right, so then we've got those sources coming in, but we may need to move them around. We may need to store those. We may need to convert, for example, you want to make ammonia out of hydrogen. There's a conversion. You want to make hydrogen out of electricity. So those are the conversions that would be happening in this set of plans. Transport, obviously, tankers and pipelines, and then storing, either storing things as gas, high pressure in case of hydrogen, or storing it as a liquid, or storing energy in batteries. And then, of course, we've got users, and this is all part of this market ecosystem. All right, so get ready. Here is the big block diagram. So let me break this down a little bit for you. The black is electricity, green is hydrogen, blue is biofuel, and red is ammonia. Got the sources obviously on the left and the uses over on the right. This kind of indicates where I think these different types of energy will be used. For example, transportation, we've got electricity and hydrogen, probably not ammonia, probably not biofuel. Industrial heat and aviation. And so you can see on the rest of these, the types of energy that I think are going to go to those. And then the steps in the process. Now, some of these things like storing, well, let's say you had a hydrogen well, you might want to store hydrogen initially coming right out of the well. And then you may want to transport that either through a tanker or some kind of a pipeline. And then it probably gets stored again, out maybe at some depot where maybe trucks would come and pick it up or whatever. So this isn't intended to show all the complexity of every step, but basically just to show the functions that are probably going to exist somewhere within these paths. And so the idea here would be, let's say, for example, we put together this consortium and this is our plan. And we're talking to a company that wants to put in a hydrogen well or maybe underground hydrogen generation. They can look at our plan and they can say, okay, I need somebody to get this hydrogen from the well to the station, to the transport, the point where you're going to sell this for vehicles. And so we need somebody to do transport. Okay, what's in the path and who would that be? Who are the companies and so forth? And so I've plugged in just a few here. We've got, for moving hydrogen around as a tank, in tanks or as with trucks, we've got Gen H2 and we've got Chart out there. And then for the fuel stations, we've got, New Day Hydrogen and BNG. And so this is a way for the people who are members of that consortium to say, oh, okay, here's the folks I can talk to. I want to convert hydrogen to ammonia. I'll go talk to Starfire. And so obviously we would have multiple companies for each of these blocks in here, electrolyzers. I mean, that's the Nells of the world and so forth. But the idea is to just try to get the ball rolling on this by throwing out a plan, throwing out an idea, and then getting folks that are interested in participating. All right, let's see. What have I got? My next, I think. So let's talk about the implementation for a second, and we can come back to maybe some questions. So I think one of the initial things would be to enlist these consortium or collaboratory members, work on this market ecosystem, flesh it out, add more detail, change things, delete things, or whatever. And then to identify specific paths, like I just did the example, that you've got some folks who are interested in participating on this. All right, let's see if we can't work together to deploy those elements and basically just work on it, make it happen. And as I said earlier, some of these elements of this system may not be deployed in Colorado. We probably don't have nuclear. We may decide we really aren't going to do any algae here. So that's okay, but at least they're not missing from the diagram itself. Now, I think, yeah, that's all I've got on that. So how about a few questions or comments or anything? Does anybody think this is a good idea, bad idea? What do y'all think?
Brian, I think it's a great idea. Would you be also looking for well thought out proposals? Like we have a possible application somewhere in Colorado using in conduit hydropower and small electrolysis. And could would the new hub help facilitate perhaps getting a consortium together, because we want to go after that $750 million for a demonstration with DOE, and maybe we get NREL involved, perhaps we get some university involved. So I'm just curious if you're looking for something that might be baked, and but it needs a little more incubation or acceleration, so to speak.
Absolutely. And that's why this is here, is to get people thinking, to get people cooperating and acting. Yeah, definitely want the universities involved. And Frank, I need to look at this diagram and see if I need to add anything to include, your method of using basically wastewater as energy to run electrolyzers and so forth. But absolutely. And I'm hoping that what will happen here is you get no, not people breaking off, but like maybe you see something on this, Frank, and you just take the initiative to start calling people up and saying, "Hey, let's put your company, my company together. Let's work to do this, or let's get it to the point where it's saleable, so to speak, as a grant application and things like that." But I think this is the first step to just really get people organized, get them thinking, getting them collaborating, cooperating. And I do want to contact the universities, the folks who are involved in the hydrogen hub, everybody.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Yeah, you bet, Frank. Others. I know it's hard to comment and have discussion on Zoom, but definitely looking for feedback on this. And certainly, y'all can send me your questions. I'll get these slides up right away onto the website. And of course, the recording of this meeting will be on our YouTube channel. And by the way, if you want to listen to any of those recordings, be aware that you can change the playback speed. So you may want to speed it up a little bit. It's still understandable, but gets you through things a lot quicker. Well, all right, and we can certainly come back to more questions on that if we have them at the end. But I did want to talk again about this high school, and it's really kind of workforce development, education, or whatever. But it's revolving around this hydrogen remote control car racing program. So the H2GP Foundation, which is Hydrogen Grand Prix Foundation, and CHN, as a lot of you have already heard, we've teamed up to sponsor high school hydrogen remote control car racing here in Colorado. Now, Horizon was founded in 2003, and basically they were bringing hardware kits and curriculum to the schools, things like solar energy, wind, hydrogen, and so forth. And in 2015, they launched this, what they call the Hydrogen Grand Prix series of races. And this was a way to get the students engaged with some hands-on work. We'll talk that a little bit more. And it's really grown. The Horizon Educational is actually located in Prague, Czech Republic. And, but they're active in a lot of different countries. The races now have become international. You can see the countries and the number of students involved. And in order to help facilitate this, just last year, they decided to launch this nonprofit H2GP Foundation. And I'm actually a member of the board of that. And the idea is to get out there and start sponsoring more races and promoting this in other states, like Colorado, for example. And of course, by having this nonprofit foundation, the donations to this are tax deductible. There's the website for the H2GP Foundation. So just a little bit of background on the Grand Prix Pro Racing. This is a science, technology, engineering and mathematics, science, technology, engineering, mathematics-based educational program for the high schools. But with the hands-on work, they really have seen a lot better engagement from students than if they're just doing strictly kind of textbook type of work. The students work in teams, and they design, engineer, and construct basically a 1/10 scale fuel cell powered RC car. And the students work together to take the car from the design stages through prototyping, manufacturing, learning all about chemistry and physics and engineering and math along the way. And, as somebody who was in engineering for 36 years, I'll say also that when you go to build something, you discover it may not work the way you thought it was going to or how it was done on paper. So having that feedback of actually trying to build a project and, learning how difficult it can be or what it can take, I think really adds a lot to the learning experience. And so this program basically culminates in races. So they're regional, they're 4 hour, and they're endurance races. Like so much car racing, you are limited on the amount of fuel you have. So you can't just go pedal to the metal the entire time. You'll run out of fuel. So you have to drive smart, just not drive it hard. So the packages for this, the year one students have a starter package, and this is a picture of it here, but it basically includes everything you need to basically just do a stock car. We've got the RC kit itself, we've got electrolyzer, the remote control, and let's see, let me point out what some of these things are in the picture here. Let's see, maybe I should do my whoopsie. Can everybody see my cursor?
Yeah, it looks nice and pretty there, buddy.
That shows up. All right. So this little deal here is a desktop electrolyzer. It plugs into the wall and it charges these little metal hydride fuel canisters. So they look like a battery, but they plug into this and they're charged up to, I think it's 15, does it say here? 15 bar. So they're not real high pressure, and they actually use a metal hydride. We've got an electric motor. We've got some batteries because the car runs on not just the hydrogen, but also on batteries. This thing that looks like a gun here is the remote control for it. This is the chassis. What you can barely see is a transparent body here. This is the type of body like they use on slot cars. It's Lexan, it's thin, it's real strong, and you get basically painted on the inside to whatever you want it to look like. And of course, we even have some wheels. So that's what that looks like. And the first year students, I went out a year and a half ago out to California to the race that they had out there. And there was two girls, they were working alone and they built a stock car and they did really well in the race. But then there were students that were part of high schools that had teams for years, super sophisticated. They had telemetry coming back on how much fuel they had. They had temperature of the fuel cell and all this stuff. So the students can take this as gently or as far as they want to take it. So the advanced package, this doesn't look that much different, but basically it's a little bit more sophisticated. It again gives the students a chance to go as far with this as they want to. If some of the kids may have parents that are working for engineering companies and they can go in and get maybe time on computers and things like that to really get pretty exotic and sophisticated. So there's a wide range of how much or how little the students could put into a program like this. So again, I've presented this before, but I'm asking all of you out there to try to help identify some schools, either maybe teachers or principals that we can contact. And if you could provide at least an email. And by the way, my neighbor here is a teacher. I'm gonna hit her up and see if she can give me a link into one of the schools. But we'd like to reach out to them. Maybe you have a school in mind. Maybe there's, where your kids went to school or go to school or whatever, but you don't have a point of contact. Let us know. We'll work on that. Would also like to identify some sponsors, and the sponsorship is tax deductible, either individuals or corporate sponsors. A team takes about $6,000 for the car and the curriculum and everything else. And there's a little bit of tax and shipping on top of that, pretty nominal. And then here in Colorado, we don't have a track or a carpet. And the carpet is, 12-foot wide carpet. It's something you don't really want to be shipping all over the place. So we really want to have something local. And so we're going to need a little money, but that's a one-time expense. And once we have that, then we can do the racing every year. And of course, the sponsors are going to receive promotional recognition. So if you can think of anything, please shoot me an email and just let me know. It'd be nice if you got a name and an email that somebody we can contact, or if you'd maybe let them know through a joint email that you're giving out their name. That would be great. We've already got one school that said they want to do this. It's actually Grand Junction High School, and we're working on setting that up. And then Spark has offered to sponsor a team. And so I don't know if is Sean, are you on? I just wanted to give you credit. Jim Marshall is on from out in Grand Junction. Not to put you on the spot, Jim, I don't know, but if you do have any comments, you're welcome to.
Actually, it's not Grand Junction High School, it's Central High School, first of all. And, and from what I've heard from Nicola, the sponsorship cost is about a little over $7,000 rather than $6,000.
Yeah, she
So,
was, yeah, including the tax and the shipping. I'm surprised
Right.
tax and shipping's 1,000, but yeah, it's not, it's over 6,000. Thank you.
okay. But I haven't heard anything in the last several weeks, and so I kind of left it in Nicola's hands now. Now she's in contact with the school, so I don't know. I haven't heard anything since then, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's up.
Well, Nicola was in Italy for wasn't the Grand Prix. It was one of the big races over there.
Yeah, no, she's been traveling around. No, in Monte Carlo, I think.
Monte Carlo, yes.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank on the name, but anyway, she was over there a good week or something. And so
Right.
I will be getting with her to follow up with Central High School Grand Junction. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Right.
And to work with them to get something set up. So I really hope that we're able to find, we've got to have more than one school, obviously, or they're going to be racing against themselves. But I think we're going to have some pretty interesting racing coming up. This should be around November timeframe that we're shooting for doing this. All right. And thanks, Jim, for, I think it was you that connected us up with them initially.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that is all I have. I'm always throw in, there's just a little blurb here about how the podcast is doing. But as I said in the beginning, I was expecting to probably return a little bit of time to you all today. But since we do have some extra time, is there anything on folks' minds that either questions or comments about what we've talked about here or something else? Be happy to entertain those things right now. No, nothing. Everybody's pretty happy. All right. Well, unless there's anything else, I'm going to move that we adjourn. Any last minute anything?
Look for
That's
your
it.
call.
All right. Yeah, Elliot, I'll give you a call about 7 tonight.
Sounds good. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody.